know, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I've been hearing rumors that you might be able to teach a wolf dog new tricks. And I'm not talking about Kiara, I'm talking about my friend Brianna, who owns Wolf Dog Buses, and that's whose shop I'm at today with this awesome 5-window shorty that her and I are turning into the ultimate build base, maybe for your next home on wheels. If you've been watching my videos, you know that all starts with a great subfloor system, and I have very strong opinions about the best way to do that. I'm trying to convince Brianna that those opinions are the right opinions. We're gonna do that by tackling the subfloor project together, and at the end, we'll see if I convinced her that my way might be the best way. My name's Chuck Cassie, don't go anywhere. If you wanna know how I like to do subfloors and see if I can convince her that it's the way to go, you don't want to tune out. Before we get started on this project, I want to introduce Brianna a little more formally because she does great work and she's one of the few builders out there that I actually can recommend and respect, and we all know that those are in short supply, no pun intended. Brianna, can you tell us a little bit about the road that led you to this lifestyle, you know, living in a bus and doing these conversions for other people? How'd you get here?
It was a long and rocky road. I think I was always a part of the bus conversion van community just because that's always been a part of my life way back since college.
Yeah.
But I really got into buses in particular because I wanted to upgrade from sleeping in my truck bed to maybe something with more space, a mattress, and heat.
Oh, like a real bed.
Yeah, like a real bed. Okay. And so I got my first bus and I was gonna do a quick and dirty conversion. But then I wound up with a really nice job my last year in the Navy with lots of free time. So things got way out of hand.
That's dangerous, free time.
And I wound up with a build that I'm honestly really proud of.
Yeah.
I think other people took note of that. I started getting requests and things snowballed from there. And so here we are standing in a shop and I have a full-blown business converting them now.
Whoops. She does do really cool work, and she actually also has her own YouTube channel. I'll throw some links up to that. And she did do a tour of that bus and some other buses that she's built, and you definitely want to check those out. She's got some features that she puts in her buses that I haven't even gotten around to putting in my bus, and probably won't because I'm just maybe not as cool as you. I don't know. We're gonna see what happens, but we got excited because we had this opportunity to pick up this short bus, and it's a great platform. It's got relatively low miles, minimal rust, and we decided to put our time and energy into doing all of the things that most people don't want to do or are intimidated by when they start a bus conversion, and make it easy for somebody to dive into this lifestyle, kind of picking it up from the fun part, I would say. It's a 2008 GMC 5-window short bus. It's got the diesel V8 in it, what is that one? What's it called? A Duramax. It's honestly got a lot of get up and go. It's 250 horsepower, that's more than my bus has. We got a really great professional paint job on it in a color that we're pretty stoked on. It's got a sweet rooftop deck, solar panels, and now, and window deletes. And now we're gonna be starting on the interior from the ground up, obviously with the subfloor, which is what we're here to do today.
It's a great bus. It drives fast, it handles well, and all the tough parts are gonna be done for you.
So you can get right to the fun bits. Enough of the talking though, let's go over the materials we're gonna be using and show you how we do the subfloor the Chuck Cassidy way and see if Brianna will become a believer.
Super curious as to whether or not I'll like it.
It ain't a Chuck Cassidy video unless we start talking about the materials we're gonna be using to do this project.
Which I am super curious on because this is a style that I've always wanted to try, especially since it doesn't involve poking any new holes in the floor.
Love it.
And if you've ever worked on old cars, you know that wherever there's a screw in metal, that's where the rust starts.
Yeah, it's totally true. And this method forgoes that by using this product right here in my hand. This is the construction adhesive we're gonna be using. This here is Loctite PL. There's a lot of different options out there, but I like this one because it's easy to find, it's everywhere, and it's relatively affordable, and it does a good job. If you're out there shopping for your adhesive, I recommend making sure it's gonna play nice with the foam. Not all adhesives are designed to stick to this, and you'd be really bummed if you use the wrong kind.
And so you use the bigger tube, not because it's easier to use a dispenser, but because it works out as a good ratio?
That's right, yeah. So this is not your typical size tube, or it's a typical size, but it's the larger size. This is, I think, a 28-ounce tube, which is a lot bigger than the 7-ounce tubes that fit in a normal caulking gun. And the formula that I like to use is one of these tubes per layer that you're adhering. So we'll use one tube to glue the foam down to the floor, the subfloor of the bus, the metal pan. and then we'll use another tube on top of that when we glue down our plywood.
And when you say subfloor, you mean 1 tube per 1 sheet?
Yep, 1 tube per sheet. So
Okay.
in this bus, because it's a short bus, we only have 4 sheets of plywood and 4 sheets of foam to do the whole job. So that means we bought 8 tubes, 1 for each layer of glue.
Easy day.
Easy day. The next product that we're using is the insulation, which is really important, and we're both big fans of well-insulated rigs. And for us, we're gonna be using Foamular 150. That's a name brand for what is extruded polystyrene, so it's XPS. And there's a difference here between extruded polystyrene and expanded polystyrene. The expanded stuff, it's got like the little white balls. It's what you see, like they make coolers and the insides of old bike helmets out of.
And as much as it is a lesser product, it also sucks to cut because you wind up with those little balls everywhere.
It's a huge mess. So we're using that. Now there are other boards out there that you might be tempted to consider. One of them, what's that one called?
R-Max.
R-Max, and that is a polyisocyanurate foam board. And it does have a higher R value, but only within certain temperature ranges. It's got this unique characteristic where as the temperature of the insulation drops, its R value actually goes down. So it's a great choice in warm climates when you're insulating to keep the heat out. It's not the best pick for what we're doing, where it's gonna be in the floor, which is typically the coldest part of the build, unless you can convince me we should install a radiant floor heating system on this bus. And we're also designing this rig to be good in all 4 seasons. So it's definitely gonna experience those winter temperatures. And if you look at the charts, once you get down to around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, this actually starts having a higher R value than the polyiso stuff. So that's why we picked this. If you do the polyiso, you might be okay, but if you can get your hands on some of this XPS, I think you're gonna prefer it. It's used under concrete slabs. I think we're standing on some.
We are standing on some.
Right now.
There's 2-inch
Yeah.
rigid foam under this concrete slab, so don't let anyone tell you that it's not strong enough.
Right, that's like a really common misconception, and I understand where it comes from because you feel like you gotta support stuff. I mean, in your bus, you framed out your subfloor, and in my first bus, or it wasn't even my first bus, it was just the last bus I lived in, I also framed out my subfloor. That was before this method was invented, and I've become a believer, so we're gonna try to convince her that this is the way she should do things. Once we have our foam board down, we're going with 1 inch because we don't want to use up too much of the headroom in this bus, and we're definitely not doing a roof raise. Then comes our subfloor material, and there's a lot of different options out there. In this bus, we are doing 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood, like real plywood, which is different than OSB. OSB would be my last pick. In fact, I wouldn't pick it for a subfloor application like this because it doesn't do well in moisture.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and it's, no matter what you might want to believe, your subfloor will get wet. It's just going to happen, and it's best to have something that's going to take that moisture and not warp or delaminate or explode the way OSB does. Now, on my bus, I used a product called Advantech. That's another good option. It's kind of like OSB, but it is designed and rated for water exposure, so it's good for that application too. This is what we had locally. It's something I've used a lot, and I really like it. The last thing we're going to do that I think is a good move is we're going to take just any old paint, really, and once we have this installed, we're gonna go ahead and just throw a top coat of paint on there to protect the wood more and also to seal the top surface of the wood. When we glue this all down, the bottom side is gonna be sealed from the atmosphere. If we don't seal the top side, because wood is a living thing far after it's been cut down, the wood will start to want to cup or bow because it's going to be absorbing and expelling moisture at different rates. If we seal both sides, the hope is that it will expand and contract at the same rate because both sides are sealed. At that point, the job will be done and we can move on to bigger, better things. We've got our plywood pieces pre-cut and ready to go in. If you look, this bus is really special because it does not have wheel wells anywhere. It's a flat floor all the way across, and that's really nice for your interior and for putting down our subfloor. So we aren't going to have to be making cuts around wheel wells when we're putting our foam and plywood in. Furthermore, this bus does actually have furring strips that have already been installed around the perimeter. Totally optional. Since this bus already had an attempt at a subfloor done in it, we decided to leave those in place because that'll give us somewhere to screw our boards down and we can use less clamps to hold it in place while the glue dries. This heater has been disconnected. We're going to go ahead and finish pulling it out and removing it from the bus. And since we've got everything nice and square, I was able to pre-cut all of our pieces to width. It's important to remember, because there are these chair rails here that stick out off the side, if you cut your plywood to the exact full dimension of the width of your bus, you're not going to be able to lay it in there across. You have to cut them slightly short so that they will go in and slide down. That's not usually a problem to have a gap on the side here because your walls will come out past it and that'll end up covering any gap that happens to exist there. Also, I'm a big fan, and this is maybe controversial, of leaving these holes that you see in the floor unfilled. Since we're gluing foam board, which is pretty indifferent about its exposure to water, over these holes using polyurethane adhesive, that's effectively going to patch all of the holes. So I'm not losing any sleep over that. We've got our Loctite. We've been keeping that nice and warm so it squeezes out well. Here we are in the middle of January, and we're going to go ahead and start laying our boards in, and we're just going to work our way from the back to the front. Now, we have enough weights and the ability to screw it down so that we can do this all at once. If you don't have enough weights or heavy objects to clamp the boards down while the PL dries, you'll want to do this in stages, but luckily we don't have to worry about that, and we also don't have to worry about cutting out around the wheel wells. We're going to start in the back. It's important also to make sure that the seams of the plywood and the seams of the insulation do not line up. Ideally, we want to have them staggered so that there's a few inches between the seams of the plywood and then the seams of the foam board underneath it. So what we'll do, and we've already got this working out for us because the foam's only going to come to here and our plywood's going to come to here. We're going to go ahead and use that gap to make sure that our seams don't line up. Now, if you were going to be starting the foam and the plywood in the same place, you would want to go ahead and rip some off of either the first sheet of foam or the first sheet of plywood to give you a bit of a stagger on your seams. So that said, go ahead and throw this time lapse up and you can watch us install the subfloor. This part should go pretty fast. All right, so we got the subfloor in, and we went ahead and stacked some heavy batteries in the middle to keep everything glued down nice and tight. And I'm really happy with the results. What did you think of your first time installing the floating floor system?
I think that it solves a lot of problems. It's a lot quicker than the method I had previously used, and I would definitely do it again.
Oh, look at that. A resounding endorsement. So we're gonna go ahead and paint this up. I'm gonna install the first row of strapping so that we have a nice finished edge all around this, and we'll call it a day.
You should probably ask the main person what she thinks, you know.
Oh,
She's
Kiara.
She's kind of in charge here.
What do you think? All right, we better get working. All right, we've got the coat of paint down and that first layer of strapping in. I'm not gonna walk on it because it's still a little bit tacky. There you can see the finished product. And take a look here. This is how I typically do my first course of strapping. I will block it off because there's almost always a chair rail here. And instead of having this strapping resting up against the chair rail, where it would create a very strong thermal bridge, I leave a gap here so that when you spray foam, you can actually shoot the foam back in behind there. It's still really solid, and we've got really good results that I'm quite happy with. And while we were at it, we went ahead and replaced these flashers up here, and those are looking really nice. And the bus itself, I think it's looking pretty dang sharp. How about you? Well, we got the bus out of the shop, which means we must be done with the project. What do you think? Did I convince you that this is the best way to do a subfloor or what?
I think it is one of many ways you can do a subfloor. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Okay, I'll take it.
I think it is the quickest and most painless method. So while there are many out there, I think I'll probably do this going forward.
All right, well, that's one builder convinced. I think I need to go on tour and spread the good word about this. So this bus, I think our work is done on it. We did a few other things while we were doing the subfloor, and we've made this into, I think, a really solid build platform, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this is an awesome bus. Definitely a great platform, great jumping off point.
Yeah, and we both kind of love looking at it when it's in the shop. Every time you look at it, it's like, oh, that's a nice bus.
Fresh paint jobs will do that. It is glorious. And a lot of schoolies don't get that. A lot of schoolies are DIY paint, which is cool and fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But having a real paint job just makes it feel done and completed.
It looks like a new vehicle. I mean, it's like nicer than any vehicle I own right now.
Same.
Well, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you found it entertaining and maybe even informative. And if you're interested in purchasing this bus, make sure you subscribe to my channel or keep an eye out for future videos, because next week's video is going to be a brief tour of this as it sits, with all the information you might want to know if you're considering picking up a bus as a starting base for your schooling platform. My name is Chuck Cassidy. This is Brianna. We're at Wolf Dog Buses. We'll see you next time.